Hi, I'm Justin Grammens, CEO and founder of Lab651 and author of the book Software Development Done Right. In this episode, we're going to be talking about scope creep. And the term scope creep, it can feel kind of scary at times. It's kind of a feeling that something's not right, but maybe you just can't put your finger on it in your software development project. Maybe something is lurking below the surface, causing project delays in release schedules and milestones not to be hit. And it leads to, it can manifest itself in features not showing up in the product that were not asked for initially, maybe having to rewrite code, documentation, or even tests. And all of this ultimately causes not only the project timeline to slip, but often the morale of the team will suffer as well. And I've seen this time and time again, and this can be a doozy as it encompasses many, many concepts and many, many issues that might be going on. I've discussed this in prior episodes, but according to one statistic by the Project Management Institute, it says that 50% of all software development projects experience some form of scope creep. And we'll be sure to include a link to that study in the description below. But while they say 50%, I would argue that it's likely closer to 90% based on all the conversations I've had with people developing software. So in this episode of Software Development Done Right, I'm going to touch on some of the high points that I've shared with many business leaders and engineers on not only why this happens, but also how you can mitigate it. So let's start with the definition of what is scope creep. It's also called, based on the Wikipedia definition, it's also called requirements creep, kitchen sink syndrome, and a number of other terms. It refers to changes that are continuous or uncontrolled growth in a project scope at any point after the project begins. And it says it's generally considered harmful. And I like to tell people that that point about after the project begins, that is key to all of this. It's okay to talk about scope when you're sort of in the planning phase, but once the project begins, you really, really need to narrow it down. So while we have addition of what it is, we also need to consider the team working on the project. And if you were to go back to episode 1 of the series, which we'll put a link in the description below, you'll see that software development is emotional. And if you have the right people on the project, they will want to help, right? They will want to take on whatever's being asked of them. So they will accommodate changes without actually realizing what it means to add additional features. And a few interesting things that have come out in the research that I've done, there are sort of two things, mainly around human perception, right? And so optimism bias. This happens in humans. It is defined as failing to consider how long it has taken us to complete similar tasks in the past. So we don't really consider how long something has taken. We kind of have an optimism bias that it's not going to take that long to do in the future. And then the other flip, kind of the other side of this is overconfidence, right? Assuming that we won't run into any complications that will cause delays. And in short, in a nutshell, humans really just aren't good at estimating time. I took this concept actually from a book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman that I would suggest you read. And it covers optimism bias and overconfidence. And we'll go ahead and put a link to that in the description below as well. But I want to discuss then, now that we know that this happens, let's discuss some practical ways in which we can help with this bias. And so what are some of the signs? Well, a few of the signs for scope creep are, and I touched on these earlier, constantly slipping schedules, maybe going over budget, specifically delivering undocumented or unrequested features, having to rewrite code, documentation, or tests, and even adding tasks maybe after a particular sprint or body of work has started. And I won't say that these are occurring, like if they're occurring, that scope creep is going on. I'm just saying that these are possibly red flags, or these would be red flags to make you think, okay, I think we need to delve in a little bit here and understand. The other thing is, some people ask me, is it okay for scope creep to happen? And I think absolutely, it's certainly acceptable. And if you look at the Agile methodology, it's actually encouraged in a lot of ways to allow the product to evolve over time. And the Project Management Institute, it says, to quote them, it says, because Agile frameworks are designed to welcome and manage change, the scope does not creep because change is expected and accepted throughout the life of the project. And that's directly from PMI.org. What I want to stress here is while we can accept it and it's okay, we need to apply tools and techniques to help us work through it. So sort of the purpose of all of this is sort of how do we manage it and what are some things that we can do? Well, here's a short list in not any specific order. And I actually have a full presentation that I've done on this topic at many, many conferences that I'll share in the links below. But here are some of the high points. Remember, touched on it earlier, software is emotional and it can be irregular. So make sure you have clear and consistent communication with all members of the team. You're going to want to multiply time estimates by some amount. I say at least start with 2x to kind of overcome some of these biases that I talked about. Create a template for each body of work, right? So when you actually sit down and plan out the work, kind of understand what expected results are going to happen, what errors could happen in the system, what type of logging or tests need to happen. So you really need to be tight on your tasks. Allow the team to suggest alternatives. I think ultimately, or what I see a lot of times is project managers or product owners kind of come in and tell people the way to do that. I would encourage you to open the discussion up, and oftentimes other people on the team will have other ideas that will be faster, even better alternatives to implementation. Make sure you always have sprint reviews and retrospectives so you can get a chance to get that feedback on why features might have taken longer than expected. We here at Lab651, we always encourage demo of working code, right? So at the end of the sprint, let's go through and actually see what you did, because this actually helps catch tasks or things that maybe might have gone off the rails a little bit and can rein in scope creep quickly. And if you're using a tool like Jira, use those tags and labels, right? So you can put features and stuff that you want to build in there, just tag them or label them for a future release. And the final thing, and probably the most important, is you need to have a formal change request process, right? So when a change happens, because we all know that something's going to happen with regards to market conditions, with regards to technology limitations, and while I like the whole spirit of the Agile Manifesto, I personally believe that it really can't be a free-for-all. So you need to have a team sort of that's looking over all of these changes, and have somebody from maybe product, engineering, QA, documentation, all sort of working together to identify the impact of the change that is going to happen. So in conclusion, I hope that when left to its own devices, you sort of understand that scope creep can sink a project, right? And there are a number of techniques that I've gone over here that can be applied to help mitigate this risk. And if you're interested in learning more, once again, we'll have a link here below to the entire presentation that I did on scope creep, and you can download it, and review it within your organization after watching this episode. Of course, I'm always open to discussing your specific issues and goals, so just reach out through our contact form, which will have a link to that as well, and discuss with me. We can set up a time to learn about some of the challenges, and I can give you personalized guidance. Finally, a quick reminder to please subscribe to this channel to be kept up to date on future episodes that I'll be publishing as we work through the Software Development Done Right series. So good luck, happy sailing on your way to a successful software product release.